Okay, what's up guys? So I want to show you how I set up my Sony A7S III, how I map out all the buttons, what my custom settings are. So depending on your shooting style, like I do mostly video, but depending on what style of filming, you want to map out your buttons a bit different. So it's not really just a default setting that works for everyone. You got to customize it for the type of filming you do. You don't want to go digging in the menu settings every time. It helps out heaps to just customize everything, have it exactly where you want, what you're using the most. You know, you're gonna save a lot of time. Last thing you want is to be under a high pressure situation in a shoot. You're like, shit, where was that thing in the menu? Having everything mapped out properly is, yeah, I think definitely essential. Got my Sony A7S III right here. The first button on the left is the C3. So C3 I've got set to autofocus transition speed. So it just changes the time it takes to change focus between two subjects. I use autofocus probably 95% of the time. Just say I have a subject sitting back there, and then there's a pole here, and I want to get the focus of the pole, and then move the camera, and then have the focus change to the subject. And I don't want to play around with manual focus and all that. I'm in a rush. I just want to get the shot. I want the autofocus to do exactly what I want it to do. So what I'll do is I'll use the autofocus transition speed. I'll just set that to a lower number. So I'll set that to maybe 4 or 3. And then I'll just go by the pole, get the focus on the pole, and then move. And the lower number it is, the slower it'll change the focus. So it looks very cinematic and slow. So if I'm going for a more cinematic slow look, I'll lower that transition speed because I want it to change a lot more smooth. If I'm shooting very high action, very fast paced, I need to get the focus really quick. I'll turn it up to like 6 or 7. So depending on what you're shooting, I change that. I, by default, leave it around 5. Next, the C1 button. C1 is just white balance. I do everything manually, all my settings are manual, so every single shoot I change the white balance. I'm making sure it's looking perfect every time I shoot. I want the white balance to be on point. And I don't use auto white balance because I don't want it changing throughout the shot, and I want it consistent. I just use my eye and I gauge what the white balance should be, and I'll change it. So at the moment in here it's 5600 because I got these lights set to 5600. Yeah, depending on the lighting, everything, I'll just change that, just gauging by my eye. Yeah, I want it to look as good as possible in camera, so then there's less work to do in editing. Next is AEL button on the side. I've set this up to focus hold. So if I hold this in, it changes to manual focus while I'm holding it. And as soon as I let go, it goes back to autofocus. If I'm shooting something and the focus won't lock onto something, I can just quickly, because my hand's already in this position, that's why I've set this button up as the autofocus hold button, because my thumbs are always in that position. So if the autofocus doesn't lock in, I can quickly hold that and then use my index finger to twist the focus ring. So then I'm filming focus, and I can just quickly get the focus that I need, the exact focus. So sometimes the autofocus doesn't do exactly what you want it to do, so it's important to be able to switch effortlessly between autofocus and manual focus. You need to understand that, because the worst thing I've seen with footage, especially from beginners, is the focus doesn't lock on. They mess up the focus. And sometimes you've only got one shot. You've got one shot to get the shot that you need. You only get one chance. Next is the AF on button. I've got that set to audio record level. So it'll just change the input level of my microphones, shotgun mic, Rode wireless mics, or just the on-camera mic. We got this little bumpy touchpad. I've set this to another good feature, focus area. So what this does, it'll change the focus area. So at the moment, it's overall what's in the frame. If you change the focus area, you get a little box that appears on the screen. And what I use is usually focus area spot L. So it's this little box that I can move around by using this little bumpy pad. So if I want to keep a subject in focus and I don't want it to lock onto anything else, I can use this and just keep their head in the frame. I'll put this frame in the center, or if I'm shooting vertical, I'll put it up towards the top. Also really good shooting objects. If the autofocus isn't really locking in properly, you can just put this box exactly where you want it to focus on. So I use this feature a lot, really good feature. And you're pretty much just telling the autofocus where you want to focus on the screen. Next is the top C2 button, which I've got it set, save memory. So I can custom save all the settings to either 1, 2, or 3 on the top. If I'm doing a shoot and there's 2 different scenes that I want to shoot with different white balances, maybe different lighting, maybe I'm shooting in a different frame rate between the 2, I'll just set the settings I want for one scene, press the C2 button, and then save the settings to just say number 1. And then the next scene, I'll change the settings to what I want it for that scene, and then I'll save it to number 2. So then as I'm going in between scenes, I can just switch between 1 and 2 without changing all the settings. You can save a lot of time by pre-saving your settings, so definitely recommend looking into that. Alright, so next, almost done I think. Next we got the little wheel. The top button on the wheel is just changing the display, how it looks. The only displays I use the little level to make sure it's level. I use that a lot. And then just like the display with all the features on the screen. I just like to be able to see everything to double check, make sure I'm shooting in all the right settings. Right where ISO is, I've changed that to shift the display to the viewfinder. So if I press that, it'll shift to the viewfinder, then back to the screen. By default, it's set to automatic, so it'll sense your eye when you put it up to the screen. But I found I keep accidentally triggering it. If you put your finger in front of here, it'll trigger it, and the screen turns off, which I don't like. When I was using the gimbal, and I would shoot vertical, the gimbal would go past it and sense it, and it would turn the screen off. I just found it really annoying, so I prefer to do it manual. So I've just set the right button on the wheel to switch between viewfinder and screen. The bottom button is touchscreen, so turning it on and off. So if I don't want the touchscreen to work, in case I accidentally press something, if I'm doing something I don't want it to be on, it's off, and then I can turn it back on. And left is gamma display assist. So I shoot in S-Log3 a lot, but it's just handy to be able to turn the gamma display assist on and off. And that just pretty much makes the picture look how it's gonna look after you add the LUT on S-Log3. So S-Log3 is very grey footage, and then you do the color correction, and then it brings back all the contrast. So gamma display assist pretty much just adds that contrast, and so you can gauge the lighting and the brightness and all that a lot better. So I always have gamma display assist on when I'm shooting in S-Log3. The wheel itself, if I rotate the wheel itself, I've set it to ISO. So there's no button that actually affects the ISO, it's just the wheel. So the wheel, if I just rotate the wheel to change the ISO, brighten the image, darken the image. And then we got the function menu. The function menu I've set up, so the first one, audio recording level. Second one, focus mode, manual focus, autofocus. Peak and level. Then we got picture profile. Then we got zebra display. Then we got zebra level. Then we got peaking display, and then peak and level. So peaking, I've got 3 settings for peaking here. Peaking is pretty much, it adds little red outlines on what's in focus. So as you change the focus, the red outlines move with it. It can be a handy feature. Sometimes looking at the little screen, you can't see what's in focus. Turning on peak and display sometimes, and maybe it's very bright and it's hard to see the screen, exactly what's in focus. So adding the peak and display, it helps you see what's in focus a bit better. Gamma display assist on here as well. Then I've got steady shot, which I always have on active, just stabilizes the footage a bit better. Then I got record media settings, so I can prioritize what card I want to shoot on, or I can shoot on both at the same time. Last one, audio signals. So I can turn off the audio signals when I'm recording, so I'll let you hear that. Those. Which sometimes it's handy to have them on just so I know that it's recording. Sometimes you, very hectic situation, and sometimes you think you press record and you don't actually press it, so sometimes it's handy to have them on. But in quiet situations, you're shooting people, you don't want it to constantly be making sounds, so I turn that off sometimes. The trash bin at the bottom is just picture profile. Switch between like S-Log3, all that. Now we got some buttons on the lens. So we got like autofocus and manual focus switch. Then we got the AFL button. I've set this to be a focus magnifier. So if I press this, it'll just magnify in so I can see if I've got the right focus, pretty much. I'll tell you the settings I shoot in. So I shoot in X, AVIC, S, 4K. And if I'm shooting something like, just say maybe vertically, or I know I'm not going to be zooming in, like mostly vertical shooting, I'll go to HD, just 1080p. But otherwise, I always shoot in 4K. And I usually shoot in 50 frames a second. But if I'm shooting, you know, just talking, interviews, things like that, 25 frames. If I know I'm not going to be slowing it down, 25 frames. But otherwise, I usually shoot in 50. So that's my custom button setup. That's how I map out all the buttons. I try and get the most out of my camera. You know, every now and then I'll change some buttons, I'll add some features. If I'm shooting in a different environment, if I'm shooting different things, I'll change it a bit. You know, I might map them out a little bit different. So you can't copy exactly what I'm doing unless you're shooting the exact same stuff I'm doing, but everyone has their own preference on how they like their buttons. So I recommend playing around with all the settings and, you know, customizing everything exactly how you want it. Let me know what you want to see next. If you want me to go into depth on any more features, maybe more in depth on my settings, a lot more videos on the way. I've got some good ideas. I thought I'd just show you my custom button setup for anyone with this camera or similar cameras, and just show you all the features I use. Yeah, thanks for watching. See you guys in the next video.